He was just a single dad, exhausted, after a long shift, carrying a takeout box of cold fried chicken meant for his daughter. But as he stepped outside that quiet Denny's into the snowy night, 6 women in torn military uniforms stood before him, silent, freezing, and waiting. And then one of them said, "Sir, may we?" What began as a simple act of kindness turned into a story that would change everything for him, for them, and maybe for you too. If stories of resilience, quiet heroism, and the kind of love that heals speak to your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Settle in, because this is the kind of story you'll carry with you long after the final word. The snow came down like whispers, gentle, endless, cold. It clung to the windshield of Jack Harlow's old pickup like it was trying to hold him in place. But he was already late. His daughter Maya was waiting in their single-wide trailer 3 miles out of town, and all he had to bring home tonight was a box of reheated chicken and 2 pieces of day-old cornbread from Denny's. He pulled into the dimly lit lot, the neon sign buzzing above him like it resented still being alive. Inside, the last of the evening crowd had cleared out. Outside, Montana's cold wrapped around the night like a warning. Jack stepped out the snow, crunching beneath his boots, his janitor's jacket soaked from a 10-hour shift at the elementary school. He sat on the bench outside the diner, not because he had time, but because he didn't want to walk in carrying disappointment. Again. He opened the box. It smelled like sadness. He picked up a fork, let it hover, then sighed and set it down. "I can't feed her this," he muttered. "Not again." And then, sir, he turned. 6 figures stood in formation just beyond the streetlight, uniforms damp with snow, faces pale with fatigue, boots caked in mud. They weren't kids, though some looked barely older than his students. Women. Soldiers. The one in the center stepped forward. Her posture was perfect, but her voice had a weight Jack hadn't heard since his days with the fire department. "We saw the food," she said. "If that's left over, and you're not using it." Jack blinked. "You want my trash?" The woman didn't flinch. "We don't want charity, sir. Just warmth. A bite. We'll be on our way." Silence stretched. The snow thickened. Jack looked down at the box in his hands, then back at the women. Something in their eyes stopped him cold, not desperation. Dignity. Fractured, but still burning. He stood holding the box out without a word. The woman hesitated, then took it with both hands like it was a sacred thing. "You got names?" he asked softly. The woman looked at the others, then back. "Ellie Carter. That's Riley Tess, Joe Naomi, and Maggie." Jack nodded once. "Jack. My daughter's Maya. We live about 3 miles east. Small place, warm, got a working heater, and one hell of a couch." Ellie's eyes narrowed. "You offering shelter to 6 strangers, I'm offering 6 soldiers a roof. Strangers don't stand at attention and ask permission to eat garbage." One of them, Maggie, maybe let out a soft laugh. Riley blinked quickly like holding back tears. Joe leaned on Tess like her knees were buckling. Jack pulled out his truck keys. "Get in. The food'll taste better inside." The ride was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't need filling. Naomi stared out the frosted window, whispering something too low to catch. Joe adjusted the heater vents. Ellie sat up front, silent but alert, still the leader even in exhaustion. "You all just get back?" Jack asked. "No, sir," Ellie said. "We've been back. Just not home." Jack glanced at her. The way she said home didn't mean a place. It meant belonging. Their trailer wasn't much, but to Maya, it was the world. She opened the door before the truck even stopped, barefoot in pajamas, her big eyes wide with curiosity. "Daddy?" she asked, blinking at the 6 uniformed women behind him. Jack knelt beside her. "We got company tonight. Friends. They're cold and tired, and haven't had a good meal in a long time." Maya looked at them, then at the box in Ellie's hands. Without hesitation, she turned and ran inside. When they followed her and the smell of cinnamon tea greeted them, Maya had already set out cups and grabbed every blanket they owned. "She's a general in training," Jack joked, watching Ellie scan the small but clean living room. Ellie allowed the corner of her mouth to twitch upward. "Permission to sit. You don't need to ask here," Jack said gently. "This ain't command. It's home." They ate slowly, like it mattered. Maggie closed her eyes after the first bite of cornbread. Riley murmured a prayer Jack hadn't heard since his own father's funeral. Tess, silent, still passed Joe the last drumstick without a word. Jack sat back watching them. Not just hungry women. Ghosts trying to remember how to live. After the plates were scraped clean, and Maya had curled into Joe's lap without a second thought, Ellie stood. "We can't stay," she said. "You've done more than enough." Jack leaned forward. "How long have you been walking?" Ellie hesitated. 3 days. "Then stay 3 nights. She looked around at her sisters in arms, at Maya, sleeping peacefully, and at Jack, this janitor with tired eyes, who'd given them more than a meal. "We won't be a burden." Jack smiled for the first time in days. "You already aren't." Outside, the snow fell heavier, but inside something shifted. 6 soldiers laid down their packs. Jack set another pot of tea on the stove, and Maya, curled against Ellie's shoulder, murmured sleepily, "You can stay. I don't mind sharing my daddy." Ellie's hand trembled as she tucked the blanket tighter around the girl. She didn't cry. Soldiers don't cry. But something thawed. And Jack, watching them from the doorway, realized this wasn't charity. This was the beginning of something sacred. The smell of old coffee and heating oil filled the morning. Jack Harlow stood by the small window over the sink, staring out into the soft gray light creeping across the frozen yard. Snow covered everything, silent, heavy, pure. But inside his cramped trailer, life stirred again. He turned when he heard movement. Ellie Carter stood in the hallway, still in uniform. Her posture, even after a night on the couch, was impossibly straight. She had pulled her hair back into a clean, no-nonsense ponytail, though Jack noticed the trembling in her hands as she buttoned the second-to-last clasp on her coat. "You sleep at all?" Jack asked, pouring her a cup of coffee. Ellie gave a short nod, more gesture than truth. "Long enough to forget where I was." "That's something." He handed her the mug. "Cream and sugar, I learned to drink it black. Safer that way. Can't get used to comfort." Jack didn't reply. He just nodded, leaned back against the counter and studied her, the way a man might study a fire part, awe part caution. She looked like someone who'd stood between life and death more than once, and maybe hadn't come back all the way. One by one, the rest of them emerged from the shadows of the hallway and kitchen. Riley, barefoot, wrapped in one of Maya's oversized pink blankets, nodded politely and went straight for the sink to wash her hands. Tess stayed in the corner, eyeing the room like a sentry. Joe bumped into a chair and muttered, "Sorry," though no one was there to hear her. Naomi was already flipping through an old Reader's Digest, like it held classified intelligence. And Maggie just sat quietly on the floor, holding a photo in her hands, the edges worn and soft. Jack didn't ask what was in the photo. Some stories walk into the room with you. They don't need retelling. Maya, in her mismatched pajamas, bounded down the hallway, eyes wide with excitement. "I made beds," she announced. "Well, kinda. I put out pillows and some stuffed animals." Naomi looked up and smiled. "That's more than most of us had on base." Maya turned to Jack. "Are they staying tonight, too?" He hesitated. "Only if they want to." Maggie looked at Ellie. Ellie looked at Jack. He didn't say anything, just handed out coffee, pointed to the eggs sizzling on the pan, and said, "Breakfast's hot. If you're here, you eat." That was Jack's language. Quiet kindness. No questions. No obligations. And the women, each battle-worn in her own way, began to settle. It wasn't long before the stories began to surface, not through big declarations, but in crumbs and cracks between moments. Riley sat beside Maya, helping her braid a doll's hair. Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing a faint tattoo on her wrist, a red cross, and a string of coordinates. "Afghanistan," Jack asked. Riley nodded. "Field hospital. Forward operating base Shaddad. We saw more blood than mercy there." He didn't press, just handed her a fresh pancake. Joe, fiddling with the toaster, stared at the wiring inside it, like it held a riddle only she could solve. "You fix things?" Jack asked. "Used to. Engines, drones, radios." But ever since the blast, she tapped the side of her head. "Some days I forget my own name. Then I remember how to rewire a generator from memory. Brains are weird." Tess still hadn't spoken. She watched everything. Quiet, calculating, but not cold. More like cautious. Like someone who'd survived something that made words seem too expensive to waste. Naomi finally set down the magazine. "I used to do comms," she said. "Encrypted radio long-range coordination. You know, the voice in your ear that told you to go left instead of right." "Must have saved a lot of lives," Jack said. Naomi smiled bitterly. "Unless the signal got jammed." And then there was Maggie. She hadn't moved since she sat on the floor. She just kept rubbing the edges of that photo. When Maya came over and leaned on her shoulder, Maggie looked at her with eyes like breaking glass. "He'd be about her age now," she whispered. "If he'd made it." The room fell silent. Jack swallowed hard and looked to Ellie, who stood near the door, like she might leave at any second. "You all got a place to go?" he asked. "No," Ellie said. "Just away from where we were." He nodded slowly. "You running from something?" "No," she said. "Just tired of waiting for someone to see us." Maya stepped forward, chin lifted like her father's. "Well," she said, hands on her hips, "I see you." It wasn't cute. It wasn't childish. It was sincere. It landed like a gavel on a courtroom bench. Riley wiped her eyes. Joe grinned. Even Tess let out the ghost of a smile. And Ellie Carter, Staff Sergeant Squad Leader, forgotten veteran of a quiet war, looked at Jack and said, "I don't think we're running anymore." Jack exhaled long and low, as if something in him had been holding its breath for years. "Good," he said. "Because if this house has one rule, it's that nobody gets left outside." Outside the window, the snow softened. Inside, 7 souls, 2 civilians, 1 child, and 6 women in uniform shared breakfast. Not because they planned to, but because somewhere between exhaustion and eggs, they'd begun to remember what belonging tasted like. And in that small Montana kitchen, something fragile yet permanent had started to take root. The floor creaked like an old man's bones under Riley's steps. She moved barefoot through the hallway, arms wrapped tight around her chest, letting the morning seep into her skin like memory. The thermostat was holding steady at 62, but cold had a way of lingering where it wasn't invited, especially in bodies that remembered war. She passed Joe, already sitting cross-legged on the floor beside the couch, tinkering with an old space heater Jack had pulled out of the shed. Heating coils busted. Joe mumbled, holding a screwdriver in her teeth. But the fan motor's still good. "Let me know when it starts to breathe fire," Riley said, voice still hoarse from sleep. The trailer smelled like cinnamon toast and coffee grounds. Jack was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, whisking eggs like he'd done it 1,000 times. Maya sat at the table, legs swinging, narrating a made-up story to Maggie, who was pretending to be very invested, though her eyes drifted now and then to the frost on the window. Ellie stood by the back door, her silhouette sharp against the weak winter light. She hadn't spoken much since the night before, not that she needed to. Her presence said enough, composed, watchful, just barely letting her guard down. Jack looked up from the stove. "Y'all ever had sweet cornbread? Not the dry cafeteria kind. I'm talking warm, real Southern stuff, honey-browned, soft in the middle." Riley smiled. "You talk like that, and we'll never leave." He grinned, flipping something in the pan. "That's the plan." Tess entered silently, carrying a bucket of chopped firewood from the shed. She hadn't said more than 5 words since arriving, but Jack noticed she never stopped moving. She was always stacking, fixing, checking windows, patrolling like the trailer was a perimeter that needed defending. Jo looked up from her work. "That's the 3rd time she's refilled the woodpile." "Habit," Ellie said softly. She was rear security. "Once you walk perimeter long enough, your feet forget how to stop." Jack served up plates, placing one in front of Maya first, then the rest. "Tess," he said, "sit and eat. The house isn't going anywhere." She hesitated. Then, as if Ellie had silently nodded permission, she took the corner seat by the door, her eyes never straying too far from it. They ate in something close to peace. Maggie laughed, truly laughed, when Maya offered her a sticker from her notebook, one shaped like a purple bear in a cape. Naomi recited a joke from a Reader's Digest. Why did the soldier sit on his watch? Because he wanted to be on time. Groans all around. "Don't encourage her," Ellie muttered, but her lips curved upward. For a moment they were just people around a table. Not soldiers, not broken. Just warm hands and warm bread. Later, Jack found Ellie alone on the porch, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, eyes scanning the horizon, like she was waiting for something to come through the trees. "You don't really sleep, do you?" he asked, leaning against the rail. She didn't answer right away. "Used to, back before it all got scrambled." Jack nodded. "Maya still wakes up some nights, from the fire. She was 4. Lost her mom. Lost the only home she knew." Ellie turned to him surprised. "How do you handle it?" "I don't know," he said. "We just hold on to each other until the shaking stops." There was a long silence, the kind that only happens when 2 people are quietly admitting something neither of them wants to say out loud. Finally, Ellie spoke, her voice barely above the wind. "You ever get used to being needed like that?" Jack's eyes softened. "No, but you start needing it back. That's the part they never warn you about." Inside, Riley was bandaging Joe's fingers after a screwdriver slipped. Tess had finally taken off her boots and was rubbing her socked feet by the heater, while Naomi sat beside Maggie, letting the other woman braid her hair absent-mindedly. The trailer had become something it hadn't been in years. Full. Alive. Maya bounded in, holding up a wrinkled piece of construction paper. "Look, I drew all of you." The sketch was wobbly and off proportion, but there they were, 6 stick-figure women in uniforms, 1 smiling man with wild hair, Jack, and a little girl in the middle holding all their hands. "It's called The Brave Girls and the Tired Dad," she declared proudly. Jo laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes. Maggie took the picture and held it to her chest like it was a medal. Ellie stepped back inside and paused in the doorway, taking it all in. This strange, mismatched group of people drawn together by snow fatigue, and something that felt a little too much like grace. That night, as the last of the cornbread vanished, and Maya fell asleep, curled up next to Naomi, Jack found himself staring at the women scattered around the trailer. He didn't know their whole stories, but he didn't need to. He saw it in the way Ellie jumped at loud noises, in the way Tess locked the door 3 times before sleeping, in the way Maggie checked her phone like she expected a message that never came, in the way Riley always made sure everyone else was okay before she even looked at herself. They were carrying pieces of something broken. But somehow, here those pieces had started fitting together, outside the cold pressed against the windows. But inside, beneath blankets and battered uniforms and the hum of old appliances, there was warmth. Not just from the heater. From the beginning of something none of them had planned for. Something called home. The first time Jack saw Ellie break, it wasn't in a scream or sob. It was in silence. It was late. The others were already asleep, scattered in makeshift nests of blankets and borrowed pillows. Maya was out cold. One arm flopped over Maggie, who didn't seem to mind. The space heater hummed. Outside, the wind clawed at the siding. Jack had come into the living room to check the windows and found Ellie at the table hunched over a folder the color of old bones. She hadn't heard him. Her fingers hovered above a single piece of paper, her eyes locked onto it like it held a verdict. He didn't say anything right away. Just stood there, watching her. After a moment, she spoke low even. "Want to see something funny?" Jack tilted his head. "Depends on your definition of funny." Ellie turned the folder so he could read. A faded document stamped multiple times in red. Her name, Carter Ellie L. Staff Sergeant. Then beneath it, status discharged. Failure to obey direct order. And even worse, record expunged. Non-retainable. Jack frowned. That doesn't make sense. You led a squad. You got those girls back here alive. Ellie gave a short, hollow laugh. Not according to this. According to the U.S. Army, I don't exist. She slid another sheet forward. This was supposed to be my commendation. For pulling 4 wounded men out of an ambush site under enemy fire. My CO said it was reckless. Said I endangered protocol. They pulled the citation before it was processed. Said I disobeyed orders by refusing to abandon the injured. Jack leaned closer. So let me get this straight. You got your team home, but they punished you for not leaving people behind. Ellie didn't look at him. Some orders are meant to be broken. Jack sat down across from her. And no one fought this. Fighting it means lawyers. Time. A support network I didn't have. I got out and that was it. No fanfare, no phone calls. Just silence. Her voice cracked just slightly. I didn't want medals. I just didn't want to vanish. Jack stared at the paper again, as if he could rewrite it with the heat of his gaze. Let me ask you something, he said, quiet now. If you had to do it again, pull them out like that. Break orders. Would you? Ellie looked up at him, eyes sharp and unflinching. Every damn time. Jack leaned back, jaw tight. Then to hell with the paperwork. She blinked. That easy, huh? He nodded. You're standing here whole or mostly. You brought back 6 women who wouldn't have made it without you. My kid sleeps through the night now because you're in the next room. I don't care what some document says. You're more real than most of the world out there. A long silence. Then Ellie folded the folder slowly, carefully, and slid it back into her duffel. That's the first time anyone said that out loud, she whispered. Jack stood. Well, someone should have said it a long time ago. The next morning, Naomi found Jack in the shed. You got Wi-Fi barely, he said. It's more wishful thinking than signal. She held up a flash drive. Think I can get access to a government database with dial-up? He raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? Naomi grinned. Ellie's story deserves more than a kitchen table. I've got audio from our last mission radio logs, encrypted comms, voice IDs. You give me an hour and some coffee. I'll give you proof the Army doesn't want to admit exists. Jack chuckled. You want strong or gasoline? Whatever makes my fingers move faster. Inside, Riley patched a tear in Maggie's sleeve, while Joe organized tools by size and purpose, though no one had asked her to. Tess was outside shoveling the walkway for the 3rd time that day. Ellie, as always, moved like a current beneath it all, subtle but shaping everything. Jack found himself watching her more than he meant to, not just for what she did, but for what she carried. He saw it when she checked the locks twice before bed, when she lingered in doorways always scanning, when she answered Maya's questions with soft precision, like every word mattered. There was a weight to her, a quiet gravity that made you want to stand straighter in her presence. And still, the paperwork said she didn't exist. That afternoon, Naomi called him over to the kitchen. "Listen to this." She pressed play. A burst of static. Then Ellie's voice, calm, clear, clipped. "Echo 4 to base. I'm requesting immediate medevac. We have wounded. Coordinates marked. Then negative Echo 4. Orders are to fall back. Repeat, fall back. With all due respect, sir, I'm not leaving them." Jack sat down slowly. Naomi looked at him. "That recording's got metadata tags, timestamps, GPS pings, and it's backed up in 3 encrypted files now." Jack exhaled. "So now we have proof." She nodded. "Now we just need someone to listen." That night, Jack printed out a picture Maya had drawn, the one of all of them together, holding hands. He found Ellie sitting on the porch again, hood-up breath clouding in the cold. He handed her the picture. "She drew this the day after you arrived," he said. "Didn't ask, didn't explain, just gave it to me." Ellie studied it, eyes softening. "She sees you," Jack said. "Not as a soldier, not as someone erased, as someone who matters." Ellie swallowed hard. "It's easier to fight wars than accept kindness. You know that." "Maybe," Jack said. "But I think you're doing both." Somewhere inside, Naomi uploaded the files to an old veterans forum. Riley prepared the last of the cornbread. And Tess, who almost never spoke, leaned over to Jack before bed and whispered, "She saved all of us. We just never knew how to save her back." Jack didn't sleep that night. Not because of nightmares, but because for the first time in years, he wanted to stay awake. Tomorrow, the world might not change. But maybe someone somewhere would hear Ellie's voice, and maybe it would be enough to make her real again. The knock came sharp and sudden. 3 raps. No hesitation. Jack wiped his hands on a dish towel and exchanged a glance with Ellie, who was standing by the kitchen sink, slicing apples for Maya's after-school snack. Her jaw tightened. Joe across the room froze mid-step. Riley set down her sewing needle with slow, deliberate care. The trailer fell silent, as if every breath had been sucked into the knock. Another set of knocks, louder this time. Official. Jack opened the door. A woman in a charcoal gray parka and smart leather gloves stood on the porch clipboard, in one hand badge in the other. Her hair was neatly pinned back, and her smile was the kind that said, "I'm not here to hurt you. Unless I have to." "Mr. Harlow?" she asked. "Yes, Deborah King, Department of Family Services. I received an anonymous tip this week concerning your daughter Maya and the presence of unidentified adults in your home." Ellie stepped back instinctively. Maggie took Maya's hand and disappeared into the back room without a sound. Jack's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "Is there a problem?" Deborah held up her badge, like it had moral weight. "Can I come in?" Jack opened the door wider. "You're already here." She stepped in heels, clicking on the laminate floor eyes, scanning the room like a customs officer. Nice place. Clean. Cozy. And crowded from what I hear. Joe stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. Tess hovered behind her, silent and unreadable. Deborah scribbled something on her clipboard. "I'd like to speak to Maya," she said. "She's doing homework," Jack replied. "You can speak to me. She's a minor, Mr. Harlow. She's also 10, and she's had enough adults barge into her life for one lifetime." Deborah's mouth tightened. "Be that as it may, I'm here to evaluate whether this is a safe environment for a child. I need to know who these women are, where they came from, and why they're living here." Ellie stepped forward, then quiet, but firm. "They're here because they had nowhere else to go, because they were forgotten, and because this man opened his door when no one else would." Deborah turned to her. Name Ellie Carter. Employment status, former U.S. Army, Staff Sergeant. Honorably, she paused, eyes narrowing. "No. Technically dishonorably discharged. Depends on which files you read. And now I'm human, Ellie said. And I helped take care of a little girl who needed more hands than one man could offer. Deborah wrote faster. Naomi appeared from the hallway holding her phone like a sword. We have documentation, she said. Audio logs, transcripts, GPS data. Ellie didn't just serve, she saved lives. I'm not here to verify military history, Deborah replied. I'm here because someone believes Maya might be at risk. You mean someone doesn't like seeing 6 women in uniform around a man who mops floors and raises a kid alone? Jack said flatly. Deborah hesitated. I'm not here to pass judgment. Then maybe sit, Ellie said. And listen, it wasn't a trial, but it felt like one. Each woman spoke in turn, not rehearsed, but real. Maggie talked about the son she lost and the ache that never left. Jo described the hum in her skull that hadn't stopped since the explosion. Riley spoke about the nights she still woke to phantom screams. Even Tess whispered, "This place is the first place I haven't felt hunted." Naomi played a snippet from the encrypted file. Echo 4 to base. We're not leaving them behind. I'll sign for it. But we're not leaving them. Deborah listened. She didn't stop them, but she didn't write either. Finally, Jack stood. I don't know what this is supposed to look like on paper. I didn't plan any of it. I didn't ask them to come. But when they stood outside that diner asking for scraps, and I saw the snow on their uniforms, I couldn't turn away. He looked toward the hallway where Maya sat behind the curtain listening. She's safe here. She's more than safe. She's surrounded by 6 women who have seen the worst of humanity and still choose to be kind. You want to know if she's okay? Ask her who helped her with her math last night. Ask her who stayed up with her when she had a nightmare. Ask her who made her a necklace from dental floss and buttons. He pointed to Riley, then Maggie, then Jo. They don't need this house. But this house needs them. Deborah stood slowly. I'll file a report. There will be follow-ups, possibly a formal review. Ellie nodded. We expected that. But Deborah said, softening just slightly, Maya appears well cared for. I saw no immediate danger. So unless something changes dramatically, she stays. Jack exhaled. Deborah paused at the door. She glanced at the group one last time. Sometimes, she said almost to herself, the system forgets to look where the light is. Then she was gone. The trailer held still for a beat. Then Jo laughed sharp and fast. Did we just survive an ambush? Ellie smiled faintly. With minimal casualties. Jack looked at them, all 6 of them, and felt something new settle in his chest. Pride. Not in himself, but in them. In what they were building here, fragile and quiet as it was. Naomi sat down with a thud. Next time, maybe just pretend we're your book club. Only if it comes with whiskey, Riley said. Maya finally emerged from the hallway. She walked straight to Ellie, wrapped her arms around her waist, and looked up. Did we win? Ellie looked down at her, voice thick. We lived. That's close enough. That night, Jack watched Ellie sit alone on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. You okay? He asked, handing her a mug of tea. I'm not used to being defended, she said. You didn't need it, Jack replied. You just finally had someone say it out loud. She didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped just enough to mean something. Above them, snow began to fall again, soft and slow. Inside, the light stayed on. The next morning, the trailer kitchen smelled like biscuits and burnt bacon grease, Jack's signature style. But it wasn't the scent that made Ellie's eyes sting as she stepped into the room. It was the sound. Naomi sat cross-legged on the couch, one earbud and one dangling eyes, laser-focused on the cracked laptop in her lap. She glanced up as Ellie entered, held up a flash drive between 2 fingers, and said, I think it's time. Ellie narrowed her eyes. Time for what to be heard? Jack looked up from the pan. She found something. Or made something. Not sure which. Naomi grinned. A little of both. I edited the radio logs, added timestamps, matched it to your service timeline, and cleaned the audio. It's not the Pentagon, but it'll punch through. Ellie folded her arms. You're uploading this somewhere? Naomi nodded. Veterans Network. Private forum with former officers, reporters, military historians. The kind of place where truths don't die alone. Ellie didn't speak, just stared at the flash drive like it was a live grenade. Riley stepped forward, gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You deserve your voice back. But it's not just mine, Ellie whispered. It's ours. If I speak, they'll look at all of you too. Dig up old records, call us liars, discredit everything we've done. Let them, Tess said from the hallway, arms crossed. They can't erase what's already here. She pointed to the kitchen, Maya humming while spreading jam on toast. Joe helping Jack with a jammed cupboard drawer, Maggie folding laundry with quiet grace. A house full of life, laughter, warmth. A house that only existed because Ellie had made a choice long ago to turn back instead of follow orders. Jack wiped his hands and turned to her. You told me once you didn't want medals. You just didn't want to vanish. He walked to the cabinet, opened the top shelf, and pulled out a small wooden box. I think you should see this. Ellie took it hesitantly. The box was plain, the latch slightly rusted. She opened it. Inside was a single dulled bronze star medal. No ribbon, no frame. Just metal, cold and quiet. Ellie's hands trembled. Where did you get this? Maya found it in a flea market bin last summer, Jack said. Didn't know what it was. The vendor said it came from an estate sale. No name, no record. Sold for $2. I thought it was pretty, Maya added, licking jam off her thumb. And sad. Ellie closed her eyes. It could have been anyone's. But it wasn't, Jack said. It was someone like you. Someone who gave more than anyone could record. Someone the system forgot. She stared at the medal, then at the flash drive still dangling between Naomi's fingers. Okay, Ellie whispered. Do it. Naomi's fingers flew. Keys clacked. A progress bar crawled across the screen. A file uploaded. A button clicked. Broadcast live audio testimony from Echo 4. It was done. By late afternoon, it had been downloaded 87 times. By dinner time, 2 retired officers had commented on the thread confirming the operation mentioned in the recording had been real. By midnight, a military podcast host had messaged Naomi asking for an interview. Ellie sat frozen on the couch, eyes wide, expression unreadable. I didn't think anyone would care, she said. You were wrong, Jack replied, handing her a cup of tea. Sometimes people just need someone else to break the silence first. The following day, a letter arrived. No return address, no signature. Just a plain envelope slipped through the screen door. Ellie opened it cautiously. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, typed, not handwritten. I was there that day. We heard your voice. Some of us made it home because of you. They told us to forget. But I never did. CM former Delta team, South Ellie, stared at it like it wasn't real. Jack took it from her hands, gently read it, and looked at her with something close to awe. You're not alone anymore, he said. That evening, Maggie made stew. Real stew. Root vegetables, garlic broth. The kind that simmered all afternoon and warmed the bones. Maya set the table like it was Christmas, complete with folded paper napkins and mismatched candles. Joe tinkered with the old radio in the corner, trying to pick up local AM. Found it, she called, turning the dial. A faint male voice crackled through the speaker, and now a story making waves across veteran networks. A group of female soldiers one believed to be dishonorably discharged has surfaced with audio recordings and testimony challenging the official record of a 2013 combat operation in Kandahar. Everyone froze. The woman at the center of the report, Staff Sergeant Ellie Carter, was believed to have been dismissed for insubordination. But the newly surfaced files suggest a deliberate act of courage under fire, refusing to abandon injured troops against direct orders. The room was silent, but electric. Naomi let out a low whistle. Well, that escalated fast. Ellie stood, walked to the radio, and turned it off. Then she turned to the table, picked up a spoon, and dipped it into the stew. "Eat," she said. "We've got things to do tomorrow." Joe grinned. Riley clapped once and sat down. Tess nodded, stone-faced, but unmistakably satisfied. Jack watched Ellie sit across from him, steam curling from her bowl, her jaw still tight, but her eyes softer, focused. Maya leaned over to her and whispered, "Are you famous?" Now, Ellie smiled. No, just remembered. And in that little kitchen with mismatched chairs and battered mugs, something bigger than vindication had settled. They weren't just fighting to be heard anymore. They were being seen. The morning of the town meeting broke with sun. Real sun splintering through the clouds like hope cracking through doubt. Snow still blanketed the streets, but it glittered instead of pressed. There was something about that light, Jack thought, as he tightened the collar of his old denim jacket that made everything feel possible. Ellie was already awake. Jack found her in the hallway, standing in front of the bedroom mirror, staring at herself in silence. She had on her uniform. Not the full regulation kit, the boots were different. The patches faded, but it was intact. Pressed. Clean. Resurrected. The bronze star sat quietly on the left breast pocket, affixed like it had always belonged there. Jack realized then this wasn't a costume. This was armor. She caught him watching in the mirror. "You look like trouble," he said. Her mouth twitched. "I feel like unfinished business." The town meeting was held in the old community center, converted from a church decades ago, but the pews still lined the walls, and the pulpit remained, though now used more for announcements about parking permits and bake sales. Jack hadn't been there in over a year. Last time was for a water main vote no one cared about. Today, every seat was filled. People weren't here for plumbing. They were here for her. Maya sat between Naomi and Maggie's feet, swinging hair braided in twin ropes Riley had done that morning. Joe held a battered manila folder full of transcripts and documents, like it was evidence in a trial. Tess, as always, stood near the back, watching every exit. Jack took a seat near the front, his chest tight. He hadn't realized how much he cared until now about what these people thought. The mayor, a short man with big glasses and a clipboard he rarely looked at, stepped to the podium. Today's meeting has been called in response to a series of public inquiries and media attention regarding the recent audio testimony released by a resident of our town, Ms. Ellie Carter. He looked out across the room, cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, if you're present, we'd like to offer the floor." Every head turned. Ellie stepped forward. She didn't hesitate, didn't smile. She walked with purpose, her boots sounding like a drumbeat on the old hardwood floor. When she reached the front, she didn't stand behind the podium. She stood in front of it, visible, exposed. "I'm not here to make speeches," she began. "I don't need applause. And I'm not asking for forgiveness." She paused, sweeping the room with her gaze. "What I want is truth, not the kind written in reports or buried in redacted files, the kind you feel in your gut when you know someone did the right thing and paid for it anyway." There was a murmur in the crowd. I served. I led. And when I was told to leave men behind, I didn't. That decision cost me my record, my benefits, and almost my name. She looked over at Jack, then at Maya, but it didn't take my soul, because I still had people to protect, people worth standing up for. A silence settled thick, reverent. "I'm not a hero. I'm not looking to be reinstated, but I won't be erased." She stepped back. No dramatic exit, no bow, just truth laid bare. The room sat in stunned quiet. Then slowly, someone stood. It was Mr. Ulrich, a Vietnam vet who owned the tire shop at the edge of town. He walked stiffly to the front, reached up with trembling fingers, and saluted. He said nothing, but his eyes were wet. Another man followed, then a woman, then half the room, veterans, teachers, clerks, grandparents. One by one they stood, not for spectacle, not because they were told, but because something inside them, something that remembered sacrifice and loneliness and honor, refused to sit still. Then came the final moment. Jack stood slowly. He didn't salute. Instead, he walked forward, met Ellie at the center of the room, and held out his hand. But she didn't take it. She stepped back, straightened, and then, before everyone, Ellie Carter discharged, disregarded, forgotten, saluted him. Sharp, precise, respectful. The room inhaled as one, because this wasn't protocol. This was declaration. This was Ellie saying, "You saw me when no one did. So I honor you." Jack swallowed the lump in his throat, nodded once, and whispered, "At ease, Sergeant." Back at the trailer that night, there were no toasts, no speeches, just chili on the stove, feet on the coffee table, and Maya curled up between Joe and Riley drawing another picture. This one showed Ellie on a hill holding a flag. At her feet were 6 figures, and beside them, a man in a janitor's jacket holding a little girl's hand. She titled it in big, uneven letters, "The Ones Who Stood Up." Jack watched from the kitchen. "You okay?" he asked Ellie quietly. She nodded. "I wasn't built for praise. You weren't built to disappear either." They stood in silence, the kind that felt like peace. Outside, the snow had finally begun to melt. Small rivulets of water trickled along the sidewalk, carving paths where none had been. It felt like something new had begun, something earned. The silence that filled the trailer after the town meeting wasn't emptiness, it was reverence. A kind of sacred quiet, only possible after something true had been said aloud and accepted. No one needed to speak about it. Ellie's salute, Jack's nod, the standing ovation that wasn't a performance, but a reckoning. And still, Ellie packed. She did it quietly in the half-light of dawn. No ceremony, no announcement. Just folded each piece of her uniform like it still deserved honor, slid it gently into her duffel, and zipped it up like sealing off a part of herself. Jack noticed first. He caught her just as she was sliding her boots on by the door, her coat slung over one shoulder. Her hair was pulled tight like on deployment. She looked ready to march. "Going somewhere?" he asked, keeping his voice even. She hesitated, didn't meet his eyes. "I've stayed long enough." Jack folded his arms. "Someone chasing you off?" "No," she said softly. "That's the problem." "No one is." He stepped forward. Then why Ellie looked up at him, eyes steady. "Because it's too easy to want this. This house. This table. Maya's drawings on the fridge. Your laugh. The way you make coffee like it's a religion. I got used to not being seen, Jack. Now I see too much, and I don't know who I am when I'm not looking over my shoulder." Jack's jaw tensed. "So you're leaving because it feels like home. I'm leaving because it feels like loss. Waiting to happen." That hit harder than she meant it to. Maya, barefoot and half awake, came down the hallway just in time to hear those words. She rubbed her eyes and looked at Ellie, confusion dawning. "Are you going on a mission?" Ellie froze. "No, baby," Jack said gently. "She's thinking about leaving." Maya blinked, then walked to Ellie, wrapped her small arms around her waist. "Did we do something wrong?" Ellie bent down, her voice trembling. "No, sweet girl. You did everything right." "Then stay." Ellie held her tighter, closed her eyes. "I can't." "You can," Maya whispered. "You just don't want to need us." Those words from that small voice broke something in the room. By midday, the others knew. Maggie said nothing, just left a folded blanket and a photo of the group by Ellie's pack. Riley cried in the bathroom quietly while pretending to look for a hairbrush. Naomi cursed into her coffee. "Coward," she muttered. And still my hero. Tess said only, "We don't run unless we're under fire." Jo, fumbling with a wrench in the shed, said the only thing she could. "Stay. Please." But Ellie didn't unpack. That evening, Jack stood on the porch, coat zipped, staring out at the last of the snowdrifts melting into muddy channels. He didn't hear Ellie come up behind him. "I'm not good at this," she said. "What's this? Saying goodbye. Or staying, or knowing the difference." He turned slowly. "You're scared. Of what that this is real. That it matters. That someone might need you not because of your rank or your skills, but just because you're you." Ellie looked away. "Can I tell you what I see?" Jack asked. She gave him the smallest nod. "I see a woman who kept 6 others alive when the world tried to forget them. I see someone who fixed my daughter's nightmares with nothing but presence. I see someone who came into this home like a storm and somehow left every corner warmer." Ellie swallowed hard. "What if I mess it up?" Jack stepped forward so close now that his voice dropped. "Then you mess it up, and we try again. That's how families work." Ellie's shoulders shook. Her hand found his. "I don't know how to do this. You're already doing it." A long pause. Then Ellie exhaled like letting go of armor she hadn't realized she was still wearing. That night, they didn't say she was staying. No one announced it. But her pack never left the floor. Her boots remained by the door. And Maya, with a child's quiet certainty, crawled into Ellie's lap on the couch, curled like she belonged there, and fell asleep. Jack covered them both with a blanket, his hand brushing Ellie's shoulder. "Welcome home," he whispered. Ellie didn't reply, but she didn't leave. Rain fell that night, soft, persistent, as if the sky itself had something to let go of. The rhythm tapped against the trailer's metal roof like a slow heartbeat. Inside, the lights were dim, and everyone had settled into the quiet rituals that had come to define their days. Riley sat cross-legged on the floor, threading beads into Maya's braids, each one a different color. Maggie stirred soup over the stove, humming a song too old for the radio. Tess cleaned her boots with the meticulousness of someone raised on discipline. Naomi scrolled through veteran forums, occasionally grinning at the new messages, trickling in small echoes of validation from strangers. Jo, however, was rummaging through a storage crate in the back hallway, the one they all assumed held nothing but spare blankets and half-broken extension cords. Looking for something, Jack asked, walking by with a fresh cup of tea. Jo paused, grinned sheepishly. "Ellie said I could borrow a scarf. She didn't say which one." Jack chuckled. "Try not to dismantle her entire history while you're at it. Can't make promises." She returned to digging, humming softly, but then her hand brushed something stiff beneath a layer of old sweatshirts. Paper. A sealed envelope. Thick. Yellowed at the corners. She pulled it out carefully. No address, just a name scrawled in sharp, controlled letters. Owen. Jo stared at it. It wasn't new, and it hadn't been meant for any of them. Later that night, when most of the house had gone quiet, Jo knocked gently on Ellie's door. "You decent," Ellie's voice came from the other side, low but steady. "Always." Jo stepped in and held out the envelope like a peace offering. "I think I found something that didn't want to be found." Ellie's eyes locked on the letter. Her face didn't move, but her shoulders seemed to fold in just slightly. "Where did you—" "In the crate. Under the red blanket." Ellie took the envelope, held it between both hands like it might disappear. "I wrote this in a tent outside Kandahar. Never sent it. Never thought I'd see it again. Joe sat on the edge of the bed, waited. Ellie stared at the paper for a long time, then opened it. Her voice didn't waver as she read aloud. "Owen, I don't know if this will ever reach you. I don't even know if you're still at the address I memorized in that diner napkin before you deployed. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe you're safe. Maybe you're gone. But I need you to know what I never said. That day, when you told me to fight for something bigger than myself, I didn't understand. I do now. It's not the flag, not the cause. It's the people, the ones who cry in the dark and hold rifles in daylight. The ones who carry burdens like backpacks, always heavy, always moving. I saved them, Owen. I saved my team. But I lost everything else. My name, my record, my right to be seen. And I thought, maybe that was justice. Maybe I wasn't meant for more. Until last week, when a man in a janitor's jacket gave up his dinner for 6 strangers in the snow, and a little girl gave me her last sticker without asking why. I remembered what it felt like to be needed, not for orders, not for rank, but for showing up. I don't need medals. I need to matter. And for the first time since I got home, I think I do. I'm not sending this, because I don't need you to answer anymore. I just needed to write it down. Ellie Jo sat in silence, then whispered, "You should have sent it." Ellie smiled faintly. I didn't think I was worth the postage. Jack was at the door now. He'd heard enough to understand without needing the details. He stepped inside, took the letter gently from her hands, and folded it back into the envelope. "You may not need to send it anymore," he said softly, "but maybe someone else needs to hear it." Ellie looked up at him surprised. He held her gaze. "You gave your team a voice. Maybe it's time you gave one to yourself." The next morning, Naomi recorded Ellie reading the letter, her voice steady measured. No drama, no tears, just truth. Then, with a simple caption, "For anyone who ever came home invisible," she uploaded it to the forum that had changed everything just a week ago. By lunch, the post had 1,000 shares. By evening, it was played on a national podcast dedicated to women in service. And by nightfall, Ellie had 37 new messages. Many were from names she didn't recognize. Some were from women who said they'd once served under her. One was from Owen. "I'm alive. I heard your voice. I never forgot." She didn't respond right away. She sat in the kitchen holding the letter, watching Maya build a fort out of couch cushions and winter coats. Jack stirred soup on the stove, humming off-key. Joe, Maggie, Riley, Naomi, and Tess argued over whether to rewatch Forrest Gump or Apollo 13. Ellie smiled, not because she was healed, not because the past had been erased, but because she wasn't invisible anymore. She was here, and she mattered. Letter or not. Answer or not. Home wasn't a place you escaped to. It was the one you chose to stay for. The letter went viral. Not overnight like a celebrity scandal, but slow and steady like the sound of boots across hard ground. Veterans, nurses retired, generals, even a few politicians shared the audio. Radio stations quoted lines from it between country ballads and traffic reports. Someone turned it into a short film with still images of women in uniform set to a haunting violin score. For a few brief days, Ellie Carter became a name again. But fame, even the quiet kind, always carries weight. It came in the form of a letter, official, sealed, and stamped, delivered by courier to Jack's mailbox on a Friday morning, so cold, the ink looked frozen. Jack opened it on the porch, while the others were still inside, laughter filtering out from a game of charades Naomi had insisted on playing. He read it once, then again. His jaw clenched. Inside the envelope was a notice. The Department of Human Services had reopened Maya's custody evaluation. The letter didn't say why, only that an escalation in household exposure, unvetted media attention, and unverified individuals residing on premises had prompted a reassessment. A court date was set. 3 days from now. Jack stood there for a long time, knuckles white around the paper, until Ellie stepped outside with a cup of coffee. "What is it?" she asked, already reading the storm in his shoulders. He handed it to her. Her eyes scanned the page. Her breath caught, and then "I'm the reason," she whispered. Jack didn't answer. She looked up, voice breaking. "I should have left." "No," Jack said, sharp now. "Don't you dare. I made things worse for you. You made this house whole. But if they take Maya," he stepped forward, "then I fight. And I don't care who they think they're up against. You gave me a family, Ellie. I'm not losing it because some suit doesn't understand what love looks like when it wears boots and trauma." Ellie blinked hard. "Then let me help." 3 days later, they walked into the county courthouse as a unit. Jack, in his only collared shirt sleeves, rolled just enough to show the calluses beneath. Ellie in civilian clothes, shoulders, square eyes clear. Maya holding both their hands. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s. Her eyes were sharp, but not unkind. The state representative listed concerns: lack of formal guardianship support, exposure to individuals with incomplete records media attention that could be considered destabilizing. Jack didn't say much. He just turned to the judge and asked for permission to speak last. One by one, the women stood. Naomi submitted documentation. Names, dates, logs. She cited military policy field transcripts, mission summaries. The courtroom listened as she laid out Ellie's entire record like a map of redemption. Riley testified about the night Maya woke screaming from a nightmare, and how Ellie held her singing some old army cadence until the girl fell asleep again. Tess, in a rare moment of vulnerability, stood, hands trembling slightly, and said, "This place is the only place I've ever slept through the night without checking my weapon." Joe described the repairs she'd made to the home, the way Maya followed her around with a toolbox and questions. Maggie said simply, "When my son died, I stopped believing I could matter. Until Maya asked me to braid her hair. Then came Ellie." She stood, slowly approached the bench, and took a long breath. "Your Honor, I wasn't a mother, or a teacher, or a counselor. I was a soldier. I was trained to take orders and keep my people alive. I never imagined I'd be the one folding laundry in a trailer kitchen, or teaching a little girl how to tie her shoes just right so she doesn't trip on her way to school." She paused. "I didn't ask to be seen. But now that I am, I won't disappear again. And if protecting that child, loving that child, makes me unfit in the eyes of the state, then maybe the state needs to remember what love looks like in the real world." The courtroom fell still. The judge set down her pen and said, "Thank you, Ms. Carter. Mr. Harlow, your turn." Jack rose slower than Ellie, more tired somehow, but steadier. He faced the judge. "I never asked for help. Not after the fire. Not when I lost my wife. I was too proud. Or too broken. But when those women knocked on my life, they didn't come asking for rescue. They came offering it." He looked at Maya, who beamed at him from the pew. "I don't have the perfect home. I barely have a working dishwasher. But I have a child who is loved deeply, completely, and a house full of people who've seen hell and still choose to make breakfast. That's stability. That's family. And if you can find a better definition, I'd like to read it." The judge didn't deliberate long. When she returned, her voice was firm. "This court finds no cause for change in custody. Maya Harlow will remain in her father's care, and this case is hereby closed." Gasps. Claps. Riley broke down crying. Joe hugged Naomi like they'd won a lottery. Maggie kissed Maya's head over and over. And Ellie, she just sat down, exhaled, and quietly cried into her hands. Not from fear. From relief. from being seen not as a case file or a headline or a mistake, but as a person. That night back at the trailer, they lit candles. Maya called it a celebration, like a birthday, she said, but for everyone. Each woman lit one. Riley for healing, Joe for stability, Naomi for truth, Tess for peace, Maggie for second chances. Ellie stood last. She held her candle to the flame, paused, then said, "For the ones we couldn't save, and the ones we did." She looked at Jack, "And for the home we made even when no one believed it could exist." Jack didn't speak. He didn't have to. He just took her hand. And in the soft glow of that candlelight, surrounded by laughter scars and hope, they sat together, not perfect, not whole, but real, and still standing. Spring arrived in pieces, not in grand declarations, but in small, quiet shifts. Mud instead of snow, birdsong sneaking through the trees, the soft hiss of melting ice under Jack's boots. The trailer didn't change, not really, but it felt different now, like a place that had been repaired from the inside out. Maya hung her drawings on every surface she could find, now refined into full stories, one about 6 superheroes in military jackets who saved a tired janitor from loneliness, another about a girl who taught them all how to smile again. One drawing hung in the window above the couch, a simple American flag hand-colored in crayon, taped, just so the sunlight caught it every morning. Below it, in Maya's careful handwriting, "Home is where they were seen." Jack didn't ask her what it meant. He already knew. By May, Naomi had taken a part-time job at the public library, digitizing veterans' records. She said it wasn't glamorous, but she smiled when she said it. Riley volunteered at the community clinic, helping elderly patients remember their medications, and more importantly, that they still mattered. Joe fixed the busted water heater in the church for free and got paid in casseroles for a month. Tess took over morning patrol of the neighborhood, walking Maya to school like she was guarding a dignitary. The principal offered her a job in school security. She said she'd think about it. Maggie started a letter-writing project for other mothers who'd lost children in the military. Her first letter went viral. The second was read aloud at a Gold Star family memorial. And Ellie stayed. Not because she had to, not because there was nowhere else, but because she wanted to. She found work at the local hardware store. Jack drove her there every morning in his beat-up pickup, always 5 minutes early, always in silence, comfortable, steady silence. Some nights she'd fall asleep on the couch with Maya curled against her side, both of them surrounded by half-finished puzzles and snack wrappers. Jack would find them there, smile to himself, and cover them both with the same fraying blanket his wife once made. Nothing about it was perfect, which made it real. One Saturday in early June, Jack stood on the porch, sipping his coffee, watching the sun come up over the hills. Ellie joined him barefoot, her hair loose for once. She leaned against the railing, arms folded. "You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't stopped at Denny's that night?" he asked. Ellie glanced at him. "You mean if you hadn't given 6 strangers your leftovers?" He smiled. "Yeah." "That?" She shrugged. "I probably would have kept walking, found another bench. Or not." Jack's smile faded. "I think about that more than I should." Ellie turned fully to face him. "Then don't. You didn't stop because you had to. You stopped because you couldn't not." Jack looked down at his mug. Still doesn't feel like enough. Ellie reached out, took the mug from his hand, and sipped without asking, then handed it back. It was everything. That afternoon, Jack found Maya in her room packing a small backpack with Cracker's markers and a crumpled dollar bill. "Going somewhere?" he asked. She looked up. "Field trip." "I'm taking everyone on a walk." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Everyone, all of us," she said, beaming. "It's time. Time for what she didn't explain." But half an hour later, The entire household followed Maya up the narrow trail behind the trailer. 6 women, a janitor and a child, with a clipboard made from cardboard and tape. At the top of the hill, there was nothing special, just a clearing with some rocks, a breeze, and the sound of the creek below. But Maya stood in the middle, cleared her throat, and began. "This is the place," she said. Everyone looked around. The place for what Joe asked, for remembering. Maya pulled a folded piece of paper from her backpack, read aloud in her clearest, proudest voice. "This is to say that Ellie Carter is real, that Riley helps people smile again, that Tess keeps us safe, that Naomi tells the truth, that Joe fixes what breaks, that Maggie knows how to hug better than anyone, and that Daddy never gave up even when no one clapped for him. This is our hill, our bench, our home." Signed, Maya Harlow, president of the Brave Girls Club. There was no applause, just tears. Ellie crouched down beside her. "You forgot one thing." "What you?" "You remind us why we stayed." Maya shrugged, suddenly shy. "I just like you all." Jack bent down and picked her up, holding her like he used to before the world cracked. "I do too, kiddo." That evening they sat out front as the sky turned pink and gold. A breeze stirred the flag in the window, making it flicker in the fading light. Naomi brought out a box of sparklers leftovers from a fundraiser. Joe lit them. Riley waved one in lazy arcs through the air. Tess actually smiled full and real for the first time Jack could remember. Ellie sat next to him on the porch steps, her head against his shoulder. "Think we'll stay like this forever?" she asked softly. Jack watched Maya dance through the yard with Maggie behind her, both laughing, both alive. "I don't know," he said. "But if we don't, we'll always have this." She nodded, then whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not letting us be forgotten." Jack reached over, laced his fingers with hers. "You made that impossible." And as the final sparkler faded to smoke, and the stars began to stretch awake across the sky, the trailer at the end of the gravel road glowed like a beacon. Not loud, not flashy, but steady, unshakable. Home. We'd love to know where are you watching from, whether you're listening from a small town, a big city, or somewhere quiet in between. It means the world to us that you're here. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe for more true stories of kindness, healing, and the quiet strength that changes lives. Thank you truly for spending time with us. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.